Moonlight spread across the black Pacific, bright enough to turn the tide silver. Water moved slowly around the long stretch of rock just beneath the surface. Two men stood there, the ocean curling around their legs. River's breath came fast, his hands resting uncertainly against Koa's chest. Koa's palms settled at River's waist, steady and warm. The tide lifted them slightly, then lowered them again. River laughed softly under his breath, the sound half nervous, half amazed. "I can't tell if the water's moving me," he said. Koa leaned closer, his voice low against River's ear. "Don't fight it." Another wave rolled in. River's body followed the motion without thinking. For a moment, the rhythm between them felt effortless and natural, like the ocean had already decided how they should move. Across the shoreline, the night stayed quiet. The tide kept rising. And somewhere between the pull of the moon and the warmth of another body, something restless finally began to slow. This is Men Being Too Intimate, Season 3. Night Tide. The halau held the last heat of the day. Sunlight slanted through the open windows, turning dust in the air to floating gold. Outside, palms rustled in a coastal breeze that never quite reached the floor. Inside, warmth clung to skin. Coconut oil glowed along shoulders and backs, the faint sweetness of plumeria mixing with salt sweat and wood. Bare feet struck the floor in steady rhythm. The Pahu drum spoke slow and deep, its pulse rolling through the room like distant surf. Koa stood at the front, broad shoulders catching the amber light, a dark wrap tied low at his hips. Sweat traced the lines of muscle along his chest and arms. He moved with economy, nothing wasted. Every step grounded, pressing into the earth as if drawing strength from it. The men followed him. River tried to. Golden light slid across his flushed skin as he moved through the sequence. He was fluid, expressive, beautiful in motion. His hips caught the sway easily, arms carving clean arcs through warm air. But he kept arriving too soon. A fraction ahead of the beat, a breath early. Like his body was always reaching for what came next. The drum slowed. River shifted too fast again. He laughed softly under his breath, brushing sweat from his forehead, his eyes flicking toward the glowing windows where the ocean's hum drifted in. Koa saw it. He let the rhythm carry one more count. Then, "River!" The name landed low and steady. Movement softened across the room. Breath evened. River stopped last, his chest rising fast, his mouth tugging into the half-smile he used when he was nervous. Koa stepped off the lead mat. Wood creaked beneath his weight as he walked through the amber light, his shadow stretching long across the floor toward River. The heat thickened between them. Up close, Koa felt like a furnace. River swallowed. "Again," Koa said quietly. The drum resumed. River began the kalo, too fast. Koa reached, his hands settling on River's waist. Thumbs pressed into the hollows above his hips, fingers spreading across slick skin. The contact anchored instantly, heavy with intention. River inhaled sharply, his breath catching loud in the quiet rhythm. Koa shifted him back an inch. River tried to slow, but his hips twitched forward again without meaning to. Koa did not move his hands away. He stayed. The room narrowed. Golden light painted their skin while the drum continued its steady roll. Koa's breath moved calm behind River's ear. This time Koa moved with him, guiding the sway and aligning their hips. His chest stayed close enough that heat transferred through skin like fire meeting warm stone. River's shoulders dropped. His knees softened. His breath stretched longer. The floor felt solid beneath his feet. The rhythm stopped running away. It settled. For the first time all day, River stayed inside the moment instead of racing past it. Koa felt it instantly. His grip eased, allowing River to carry the weight himself. River held the pace. When the sequence ended, Koa removed his hands slowly. Cool air replaced warmth. River swayed once, then stilled, his pulse loud in his ears. The drum faded. Men grabbed towels, laughing softly as the sky outside deepened toward dusk. River remained in the amber glow, his chest rising fast, his skin buzzing where Koa had touched him. Koa watched, wiping his hands on a dark cloth. He waited until the room emptied. Only heat, shadows, and distant surf remained. River finally turned. River stood near the center of the floor, rolling one shoulder, then the other, trying to shake the lingering electricity from his limbs. Koa moved to the bench along the wall, grabbing a cloth and wiping sweat from his neck and chest. His movements stayed unhurried, controlled. River watched without meaning to. Koa faced him. Your body knew what to do, remember? River hesitated. Koa reached into his wrap and pulled out his keys. The metal clinked softly in the quiet hall. Come with me. River blinked. Koa tilted his head toward the darkening windows. The tide's high. The moon's up already. River followed the direction of his gaze. Outside, silver light spilled between palm leaves. Aren't we supposed to cool down first? River asked, half joking, half nervous. Koa's mouth curved faintly. The ocean will handle that. They walked toward the door together. The halau emptied behind them, warm and quiet. Outside, night opened wide. The truck rolled down the coastal road with the windows wide open. Warm air rushed in, carrying salt night flowers and the low roar of waves somewhere beyond the trees. The sky was deep indigo now, the March moon rising huge and pale over the Pacific like something pulled closer than usual. River leaned half out of his seat, letting the wind hit his face. Did you feel how the floor was vibrating? I swear the drum was like inside my chest. And when you stepped up behind me, I thought I was going to fall over. Not in a bad way, just... He laughed softly. Like my body finally shut up for once. Koa drove with one hand on the wheel. The other rested near the gear shift. The space between their hands felt louder than everything he was saying. You always that calm? River asked. Koa glanced at him once, his eyes catching moonlight. River grinned. The road curved closer to the water. Silver light spilled across black waves and long, trembling paths. River quieted without realizing it. His breath slowed. The moon filled the windshield. Koa turned down a narrow road barely marked, sand crunching beneath the tires. The ocean was louder now, the wind steady. Just a long stretch of beach and scattered volcanic rock rising dark against the tide. Shoes came off first, placed side by side near the tire. River stretched his toes into the cool sand, exhaling as if the ground itself felt different here. The tide rolled in slow, silvered by moonlight. For a moment, they simply stood there, watching the water move. Feels different outside, River said quietly. Koa nodded. Koa stepped closer, his feet sinking into cool sand beside River's. Feel the water before it reaches you. River watched the slow roll of silver waves. The tide doesn't chase the shore. Koa continued quietly. It lets the moon pull it back. Then returns. His hand settled lightly at River's hip. Move like that. River exhaled and tried again, slower this time, letting the sand shift beneath him, letting the rhythm come instead of forcing it. They began the kalo barefoot in the sand. The ground shifted beneath them, the instability forcing slower control. Wind brushed against warm skin. Moonlight painted their shoulders silver. River's hips swayed, sand giving under each step. Koa circled him. He adjusted River's stance with a light touch at the hip. River laughed under his breath. You're serious right now? Yes. Koa stepped behind him again. His hands settled at River's waist. The sand cool. Koa's palms warm. The tide hissed in. River's body responded before his mind did. Heat gathered low. Blood shifted. His breath stuttered. Koa felt the change. River froze mid-step. Embarrassment flashed across his face. He shifted his hips back slightly, trying to create space, then cleared his throat. Are we just dancing here? He asked, trying for lightness. The wind answered instead. River stepped away abruptly, grin crooked, eyes bright. You know what? Water's better. He pulled his shirt over his head while moving, jeans unbuttoned mid-stride, laughing as he jogged toward the surf. Koa watched him go, then calmly pulled his own shirt off. He stepped out of his jeans. Both were left folded near the dry sand line. Moonlight caught their skin as they moved toward the water in their underwear, waves rushing forward to meet them. The Pacific hit cold at the ankles. River hissed and laughed, backing up as foam curled around him. Koa walked straight in. Water climbed to his calves and thighs, soaking the dark trunks until they molded to every line, leaving little to imagination. The cold shocked, but it only made the heat lower in his body more insistent, the rigid outline visible beneath the wet cloth. River splashed him. Still calm now? Koa grabbed his wrist and pulled him closer. They stood waist-deep as the tide pushed against them. The water changed everything. Fabric clung. River's briefs turned nearly sheer in the moonlight, the flushed curve beneath them impossible to miss. Koa lifted River's arms gently. The water swelled around their thighs, forcing their bodies closer for balance. "Feel it," Koa said softly near River's ear. "It tells you when to lean in, when to hold, when to let go." Another wave rolled through them. River breathed out shakily. "It's like it's moving me." Koa's hands steadied at his waist. River rolled his eyes, smiling. They tried the movement again. Koa guided the sway against the current as the tide pressed them together. River's earlier excitement hadn't faded. In the water, it was harder to hide. Their bodies brushed. Koa adjusted his grip, his hands settling again at River's waist, thumbs slipping just under the waistband this time, and he felt it clearly. The tension. The undeniable proof of River's reaction. River went still, eyes wide. A swell lifted them together. River felt it everywhere. A beat of silence. Then softer, leaning closer so only Koa heard, "Maybe we move somewhere else." Koa studied him. River glanced toward the darker stretch of rocks farther down the shore. "They'll block the wind." Koa nodded once. They moved through the shallows together. Water slides down their legs as the tide retreats and returns in slow rhythm. A darker shape stretches ahead just beneath the surface, smooth stone rising slightly above the waves like a natural platform. The rock runs long along the shoreline, wide enough to stand on, hidden from the open beach by the curve of water and spray. River points. "There." They wade toward it, waves breaking gently against their thighs. The rock is cool beneath their feet, slick with seawater but solid. Water curls around its edges, washing in and out, private without leaving the ocean. The world reduced to moonlight, breath, and tide. Water curled around the rock shelf in slow silver sheets. Moonlight fractured across wet stone and skin. River stood still, his chest rising fast, his eyes fixed on Koa like the night might take him away if he blinked. Koa didn't rush, the tide rolled in. He reached for the waistband at his hips, hooking his thumbs there. He paused just long enough for River to feel it coming. Then he slid the fabric down. The water immediately claimed his calves, swirling white around strong legs as moonlight mapped every line of muscle, every plane of heat against the cool tide. Koa stepped free. River forgot to breathe. This was the man he had watched across the halau floor. The man whose hands had anchored him. The man his body had already memorized. Only now there was nothing between moonlight and skin. Nothing between want and reality. Heat surged low in River's body, sudden and undeniable. His breath caught sharp. His body answered before his mind could soften it. Exposed in the silver light, Koa saw it, not with surprise. River swallowed, embarrassed laughter caught in his throat. Koa stepped closer, water shifting around his thighs. "You don't have to hide here," he said softly. River's hands trembled as he reached for his own waistband. The tide rolled higher along the rock shelf, cool water sliding around their calves before drawing back again. River stood very still. His breath had gone uneven, the earlier laughter gone now, replaced by something softer, more uncertain. Koa stepped closer. His hands returned to River's waist the same way they had in the halau, thumbs settling into the familiar hollows above his hips, fingers warm against trembling skin. The contact steadied him immediately. River let out a shaky breath. Another wave lifted against the rock, water climbing briefly to their thighs before falling away again. Koa leaned closer, his forehead brushing River's temple. River nodded, eyes closing for a moment. The ocean moved around them in slow rhythm, the pull and return of the tide rocking their bodies gently together. River's hands rose to Koa's chest, spreading across warm skin, feeling the steady strength beneath his palms. Koa answered by drawing him closer, one arm firm around River's lower back, the other steady at his waist. Then the hold shifted. River felt the change immediately. The restless urgency that had always pushed him forward eased into something slower, deeper. Each movement followed the tide instead of racing ahead of it. The ocean lifted them again. River pressed closer, breath breaking softly against Koa's shoulder. Koa's hand moved gently up the line of River's back. The next wave rolled in stronger. River held on as it lifted them together, the cool water rising and falling around their bodies while heat gathered steadily between them. This time River didn't rush. He stayed inside the moment. Koa felt the shift in him, the surrender of tension, the trust settling fully into River's body. River nodded against his shoulder, breath shaking as the tide carried them once more. Koa's hand traced slowly along the line of his spine. Neither of them spoke. They stayed there, anchored together in the quiet pull of the tide. The water eased back. Waves softened to slow, lazy curls against the rock shelf. River stayed tucked against Koa's chest, listening to his heartbeat through warm skin. Eventually, Koa shifted first. "Cold?" he murmured. River nodded with a small laugh, a little. Koa reached down, finding the fabric that had floated back against the stone. He wrung the water from it before handing it to River. They dressed slowly. The walk up the beach felt different than before. Shirts and jeans waited where they had left them, side by side in the sand. River hesitated near their clothes, still glowing in the moonlight. Koa didn't rush. He gently hooked a finger into River's waistband and pulled him close instead, simply wanting him near. River melted into it instantly, his forehead pressing against Koa's chest. Koa lowered his mouth to River's hair. A soft kiss. Then another along his temple. Koa lifted River's shirt first, shaking sand from it before gently pulling it over his head, his hands brushing warm skin as he guided it down. River smiled softly, letting him. Then River did the same for Koa, tugging his shirt up and over broad shoulders before smoothing it down his chest, as if he wasn't ready to stop touching yet. They stepped into their jeans slowly, close enough that their hips brushed. River stepped closer, resting his shoulder against Koa's arm. "I think I was waiting for someone like you." Koa didn't answer with words. He simply let River lean in. The moon hung high above them, silvering the ocean they had just left behind. They walked back to the truck together, bodies still warm, breath calm, the restless energy finally replaced by something steady and certain. Koa laced their fingers together first and gave a gentle squeeze. River looked up, surprised, smiling wide. Koa smiled back, quiet and sure. They walked in step, hands swinging lightly between them. The tide continued its rhythm behind them. But River didn't feel pulled by it anymore. He had already found where he belonged. They reached the truck still holding hands. Koa opened the passenger door first, steadying River with a palm at his back as he climbed in. Sand brushed from their feet. The night air carried the steady breath of the Pacific behind them. Koa circled around and slid into the driver's seat. The engine stayed quiet. Moonlight spilled through the windshield, silver across River's damp hair and bare throat. River turned toward him. "Thank you," he said softly. Koa studied him. River smiled a little, unsure how to explain it. "For slowing me down." Koa's mouth curved. River reached for him first this time. The kiss landed warm and certain, just deep enough to make River's fingers curl into the collar of Koa's shirt. Koa answered easily, one hand sliding to River's jaw, the other steady at the back of his neck. River laughed softly against his mouth. "If we stay here, we're not going anywhere." "Do you want to?" River kissed him instead of answering. Soon after, Koa started the engine. The truck rolled forward onto the quiet coastal road. Moonlight stretched across the ocean beside them, the Pacific wide and silver under the huge March moon. River leaned his head back against the seat, watching the water through the open window. "That moon's ridiculous tonight," he said. Koa glanced toward the horizon. "It is." They drove the rest of the way in easy silence. Koa's house sat just above the shoreline, tucked between palms and dark volcanic stone. The truck rolled into the gravel drive and came to a quiet stop. River opened his door first. The ocean spread wide below them, the moon laying a long silver path across the water. He stepped out and looked for a moment. Koa joined him beside the truck. River turned back toward him. The kiss came again before either of them said anything. Closer this time, hands sliding naturally to familiar places. They walked toward the house like that, stopping twice along the short path because neither of them seemed able to stop touching. By the time they reached the door, River was laughing softly again. "Your fault," he said. Koa opened the door. River caught his shirt and pulled him into one more kiss before they crossed the threshold. The door closed behind them. Outside, The tide continued its quiet rhythm under the bright Pacific moon. An ENFJ builds connection through presence, a strength that invites others to rest when the world moves too fast. For Koa, closeness is never forced. It is something offered through patience. An ENFP moves differently through the world, a restless pull toward whatever feeling rises brightest in the moment. For River, life has always been motion, chasing the next horizon before the last one settles. In the water that night, neither of them fought the rhythm. Koa held steady. River slowed down. An ENFJ and an ENFP. Different ways of moving through the same tide. But sometimes the ocean does something unexpected. It teaches the wave where to rest. And it teaches the shoreline how to hold it. This is Men Being Too Intimate Season 3. Night Tide. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more stories on gay audiobooks. Also my short novel, Men Being Too Intimate series. The Voice in My Ear, The Unplanned Weekend, The Night We Found What We Lost, and more are now available on Kindle Unlimited. You'll find the link in the description. Hope you check it out and enjoy. Thank you. Every breath slower, every touch deep. I was chasing the world.